אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד.
That was kind of abrupt. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Good to see people on Zoom and in the room. I'll change that to gallery. Hi, everybody.
Too emotional?
We've met. I know everybody, I think. Okay, let's see. Can I get this on gallery?
That's your son's thing. Moshe. We dropped the love.
No. Okay.
No. Yeah, I got this.
Okay.
Like
Let's go.
11 years ago when I was a lot younger.
Got a lot to do. Oh, you brought everybody confidence?
No,
That's a
no,
good
no.
one.
You got two for yourself?
Sometimes they bring the teacher's apple. Sometimes they bring the teacher a couple of calls. Victor, can I ask you a question? Victor,
Yes.
Yeah, I had a joke because he didn't
how do we
get
put this on gallery? I don't see a mouse. Sorry, we're gonna start in a second. Ah, there's the mouse. The mouse is hiding, which is one of the themes for today, hiddenness, which we will get to, but that was the theme of the song that we just heard, that even in the concealment, remember they can hear everything, you're whispering, I can't hear it. Anything you're saying. That even in the concealment that is in the concealment, God can be found, and even in the hard things that we experience, God can be found. So those are Nachman Bratzlaff's words, and that was sung by Yosef Karduna. And we will return to those words sometime during this session. Okay. My God, there's a lot of just like names on the screen and not like live boxes. Welcome. If you can turn your video on, that'd be great. I'd like to see people's faces. And if you can't, that's okay too. But I urge you to do so. It helps. All right, Shabbat Shalom. We're in Nitzavim Vayelech, and it's time for the bracha over Torah. It's not on this screen. Why is that? I don't understand anything. It's okay. Everybody, Catherine is screen sharing.
Oh, is she? Oh.
It's okay.
Let me take it off. But is one able to see?
It's okay. It's okay. I think. Whoever would like to say the bracha right now, you can take yourself off mute, and people in the room can also participate. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher qideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot divrei Torah. Universe, Master of our lives, who has commanded us to study Torah and soak in divine revelation. Okay, so we're in one of my favorite parshiot, especially Nitzavim. It's a double parsha, Nitzavim Vayelech, and lots to say about it. So we're just going to dive in. Of course, my source sheet has disappeared. Of course. Just give me one moment. I promise not as many technical glitches as last week. But some. What would we be without technical glitches? Okay, let's see. Would be a person. No, we have technical glitches, don't we? No, we don't. No, not technical, other glitches. Okay, let me try this again. Let's see if the spreadsheet comes up. Share. Oh, it seems to be here. Aha! There we are. I see it on the screen. I see it on my screen. Oh, Michelle's in from California. Maclef is here. Okay, the gang's all here, excellent. So this is such an interesting parsha, there's so much to cover, so I'm sure I included too much, so we're probably not gonna get to everything, but you have it in your source sheets if you wanna continue to study later. But hopefully we'll get to the meat of things, at least some morsels of meat. And I called it Paradoxes of Tshuva. My Chavruta and I, Rabbi Sharon from Anatfeld, who could not be with us this morning, but was with me earlier this morning, someone said to me, oh my God, you do Chavruta so early in the morning, but I'm one of these morning people, so it's actually a problem for me. So we came up with this together, Paradoxes of Tshuva, Presence and Eternity, Standing Still. So I'm hoping that at this moment, which is full of instability, right? Floods in Florida, a mayor being indicted, an American election, I don't know about you, but feeling terror for Israel and the whole region. And I could probably go on, but I won't. At this moment of, there's like tectonic plates shifting, I thought, well, my hope was that Torah would give us a little sense of solidity and touching something maybe beyond this moment. And that's what the portion's about. It's about this moment and touching something beyond this moment. So let's see how the rhetoric of Deuteronomy, and specifically this parsha, kind of creates that sense. Okay, here we go. So starting in last week's parsha, which is Kitavo, just to give us a little background, to show us a little like sleight of hand. So let's remember what generation is standing before us. We're in Deuteronomy, and this is the generation that's about to enter the promised land. So what generation is this? Is it the generation that left Egypt? Is it the generation that were slaves? No. So it's what? The two?
Second generation.
Second, right, it's the children of those
Kids.
people. Okay, great. So it's the children of those people. So these people that are being addressed by Moshe, and this book is one long address by Moshe, right? Not one, actually, I think 5 speeches, interconnected speeches. And it's Moshe preparing the Israelites to go to the promised land and also to live without him, right? So Moshe is actually preparing for his own death. You know, it reminds me, my husband and I are working on a will, finally, we've been putting it off for many years, but it's hard, right? It's like you're really staring, you're looking at death in the face when you do that. And every day we could be looking, I mean, death is always present in some way or another. It's either in our consciousness or not, but it's certainly in the consciousness of this parsha, or this double parsha, so we will see that. Okay, so let's see, let's look at some of the rhetoric of Deuteronomy and what feeling and sensibility they are trying to instill in the people, or Moshe is trying to instill in the people. So we're starting with, let me just ask, was Asher Chaim there? When I get tired of reading, is Asher Chaim there? Maybe someone else will take Asher Chaim's place if he's not. Okay, not yet. It's okay. All right. Vayikra Moshe el kol Yisrael vayomer alehem atem v'item et kol asher Adonai le'einechem be'eretz Mitzrayim l'Pharaoh l'chol avadav u'l'chol artzo. So Moses summoned all Israel, and notice the all word, right? Kol Yisrael, and said to them, you, right? Very direct. You have seen all that Adonai did before your very eyes in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his courtiers and to his whole country. But they didn't. They didn't see it, right?
Some.
No, none.
The children survived who were less
That's an interesting point. So it's a
Ones who are less than 20 years old.
Right.
Okay, good point. Some, but
they were children at the time.
right, but there's no distinction here. You have seen it, so there's a sense that, and you have all seen it, so that's not true.
Right.
But thank you for that little correction. Okay. Hamasot hagdolot asher ra'u einecha ha'otot ha'moftim dolim hem. Hagdolim hem. The wondrous feats that you saw with your own eyes, those prodigious signs and marvels, right? Prodigious is dolim, the great, the big, right? But asher ra'u einecha, your eyes have seen. V'lo natan Adonai lachem lev lada'at. בעיניים לראות, ואוזניים לשמוע, עד היום הזה. Yet to this day, God has not given you a mind to understand, or eyes to see, or ears to hear. What is Moshe talking about? Until this day, right? They could not understand, right? So if you think about what happened at Mount Sinai, the people literally could not tolerate God's voice.
That's right.
Moshe, right? Don't let God speak to us. You speak to us lest we die.
Right.
Right? And then they were made to, circumnavigate, is that a word? Circumnavigate?
Yeah, more or less.
Navigate, not navigate?
No,
I think I'm conflating two words. Circumnavigate the wilderness for 40 years because there's something they needed to know and they didn't know. And on this day, they know it. Right? So what's the thing they know? Right, those signs and wonders, right? There's something about now they have eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart to know. V'olechem 40 shana b'midbar. As I just said, I led you through the wilderness for 40 years. V'lo valu salmotecha me'alechem. And your clothes did not wear out. Nor did the sandals on your feet. So there's a sense that they were taken care of.
Yep.
They were really taking care of the wilderness. And the prophets remember the period of the wilderness. Even though the Israelites complained their way through the wilderness, the prophets remember it as a honeymoon, as a beautiful love story between God and the Israelites.
Can I make an observation?
Yes, you can.
Mind to understand, eyes to hear, see, or ears to hear. Isn't that the way idols are described?
That they don't have those things.
Yes. Yeah, and he's saying you don't have those things. Yet to this day.
Yes,
it's
they
not
didn't
given.
have those things. That's interesting. Until this day.
Yeah.
Now you have them.
Well, where does he say you have them? Yet to this day, it still doesn't say you have them.
Hold on a second. That's interesting. I think maybe you can read it both ways. I mean, mind to understand, or eyes to see, or ears to, yet to this day. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong here.
Even to this day.
Even to this day, you haven't.
Yeah.
You can't.
And I've always been.
Oh, I think you're right. Okay.
I've always been freaked out by the negative predictions that Moses keeps making. And you're not going to listen, and you're not going to.
We're going to get into negative
it's
predictions.
because they're unconscious.
Because they're unconscious, exactly. So there's a lack of consciousness. And it's interesting, until this moment, until this day, I always read this as, until now you haven't had eyes to see and a heart to understand, but now you do. But I think you're right. Even now they don't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That means that the generation going into the land are not conscious.
Yeah, that's a little depressing. I'm upset about this.
But Moses keeps predicting they're going to.
Well, we're going to look at that. Hold on to the screw up. We're going to get there. Okay.
They have a bad track record.
They have a track record. Okay. Lechem lo achaltam v'yayin v'shecha lo shtitem lema'an ted'u ki ani Adonai Elohechem. You had no bread to eat and no wine or other intoxicant to drink, that you may know that I, Adonai, am your God. So it's all, and Eric, I'm glad you raised this, it's all about consciousness. Like, you haven't had those things. You didn't eat lechem, you ate manna. You didn't eat wine because that gets in the way, that dulls consciousness, I would say that. So that you can know God, right? It's all about their consciousness. And there is something, even if this generation doesn't truly know, there's something about the last generation that their consciousness was certainly not ready for prime time. And there's an idea that the younger generation has emerged somewhat from slave consciousness and can enter the promised land. ותבואו אל המקום הזה ויצא שמחון מלך חשבון ועוד מלך חשם. Okay, wait, actually, skip this and go to 8. ושמרתם את דברי הברית הזאת ועשיתם אותם למען תשכילו את כל אשר תעשו. Therefore, observe faithfully all terms of this covenant that you may succeed in all that you undertake. So those are the verses before Mitzrayim. And again, there's a sense of history that didn't happen to most of them. but is somehow instilled in them as if they had experienced it. Right, you saw with your own eyes. Right, so let's say your grandparents are Holocaust survivors, or your great-grand, so it could be, depending on the quality of the storytelling passed down through the generations, that you feel like you were there. So there's this wonderful film called Cottage. I forgot the name of thank you, filmmaker. About Yossi Klein Halevi, who many of you might know as a journalist and a thinker in Israel. And he grew up with his father telling him stories every night about being in a bunker. Do you remember where? Somewhere in Europe during the Holocaust. And, it was so instilled in him that it became his own experience.
I misspoke.
Oh, you did?
Amos Gitar made a film, Kadosh. I don't know this.
Oh, you don't know this
I
film?
don't know this.
Does anyone know this film?
I know this film, and I'm pretty sure, it was a lost film, but we think Yossi Klein's related to us, and they're relatives of ours in that film. My father was telling us about it when we saw it, and I don't remember exactly, so we've been looking for it. It was a whole thing in my family.
Well, it's not a lost film at all.
Well, in my house, we had it.
Oh, you had it? I will not dispute that. Okay. All right, so now, Nitzavim, the beginning of Nitzavim. Atem Nitzavim, Hayom, Kulchem, Lefnei, Adonai, Elehechem, Ashechem, Shutechem, Ziknechem, B'shotrechem, Kol Ish Yisrael. You stand this day, all of you, before you got up. Now your tribal heads, your elders, your officials, every householder in Israel. So let's see who else is specified in this group. Tapchem, Neshechem, your children, your wives, Gercha, your strangers, as if all these groups belong to you, right? Asher B'Kereb Machanecha, who are in the midst or the center of your camp. Mechotev Eitzecha, from the wood chopper, Ad Shoev Meinecha, from the wood chopper to the water drawer. So it goes from the elite to the common laborer person. And let's actually look at a quick piece of commentary on that from the Mei HaShiloach, a Hasidic commentator who says, so you're all standing here today, you're all tied to God somehow. Rashechem, Haino, Madrigat Dola, Ad Shoev Meinecha. So your heads, that's the highest status, until the water drawer, Shehu, Madrigat, which is the lowest rung of society. Kulchem atem kushrim b'Hashem yiparach. All of you are tied to God. So no matter where you stand on the ladder of the hierarchy of society, you are all connected to God directly. And one more piece of commentary here. Atem nitzavim, you are standing this day, all of you, before the Lord. Milamed. שכינסם משה לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא ביום מותו, הכניסם בברית. This teaches that Moses assembled them in the presence of the omnipresent on the day of his death in order to initiate them into a covenant with him. So we'll see later on why the commentaries think that Moshe is standing here on the day of his death. It becomes very explicit, but this is like he's, again, readying them for his absence. Okay, so let's go on here. Okay. L'avracha b'vrit, 11. Adonai l'hacha uve'alato, to enter into your covenant, into covenant with your God Adonai, which your God Adonai is concluding with you this day, with sanctions, Asher Adonai Elohecha korent imcha hayom. Lema'an hakim otam hayom lo la'am. I'm sorry. Lema'an hakim otcha hayom lo la'am והוא יהיה לך לאלוהים אשר דיבר לך, וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם, יצחק ויעקב. In order to establish you this day as God's people and in order to be your God, as promised you and as sworn to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So now it becomes very explicit. Who is this covenant with? I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, right? This is not only with you in terms of time. It's not only those who are standing here today. Ki et asher yeshno po imanu omed hayom l'fnei et asher einenu po imanu hayom. But both with those who are standing here with us this day, before our God, and those who are not with us here this day. So this is a moment for eternity. It's not just for this moment. And it reminds me, there's a well-known joke, at least in more traditional communities, where, someone picks someone else up with a line and says, oh, I think I've met you before. And the other person says, where? And goes, oh, I met you at Sinai. Right? There's a sense that that we were all at Sinai. Right? And this is kind of a Sinai moment. This is a covenant moment. Okay. We're going to do one more verse here, and then we'll go on. Ki atem yadatem et asher yashavnu be'eretz Mitzrayim et asher avanu b'kereb hagoyim asher avartem. Well, you know that we dwelt in the land of Egypt and that we passed through the midst of various other nations. Okay, so again, there's a sense of instilling history in those who are staying there. And I bring in here the Bible scholar Everett Fox to comment on this rhetoric. This, rhetoric that's very sort of common or really characterizes the book of Deuteronomy. The experience of hearing the repeated todays in Nisavim, Hayom, in essence transforms the text's later audiences into Moses' addressees, meaning us ourselves. Here we are, Hayom, today, right? Gives that sense of immediacy that we need to listen now, and that we ourselves need to internalize this history. And, of course, Passover is the holiday par excellence that internalizes the experience of Egypt and liberation. So the experience of hearing the repeated today's Nisadim, in essence, transforms the text's later audiences into Moses' addressees. I'm suggesting that it is difficult to be present at the reciting of these words without feeling somehow addressed. And we're going to see this footnote in a minute. In a small way, then, these kinds of scenes are reenacted whenever the Torah is read aloud. Today, in Nitzavim, challenges all hearers of the text to make the moment their own. The book of Deuteronomy, the great example of the teaching made new, thus begins the Jewish process, as old as the Bible itself, of rehearing and rethinking the tradition. Why? Because the book of Deuteronomy is a book in which the whole history, or original history, is repeated by Moshe. And it's repeated so that we can take it forward with us. And, I don't know about people here, but I am somehow comforted in a weird way to know that even though this moment is so excruciating for the Jewish people, there were other excruciating moments. That somehow we are not exempt from history and we stand with our ancestors, right? And their moments of fear and grief. So, Everett Fox gives a wonderful example. It's a similar effect in a more modern setting might be heard in the Gettysburg Address, where Lincoln's repetitions of the word "here" echoes for later audiences well beyond the confines of the battlefield. Tomas, do you feel like reading it?
Sure.
Okay, the Gettysburg Address.
The Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, November 19, 1863, first copy.
And just notice the nows, the we's, right? And the here's.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom and a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
So it's a powerful piece of rhetoric in the sense of we hear today. We hear, what are we hearing today? I'm going to read one more text and then open things up to discussion. Okay, Thich Nhat Hanh, who died recently, right, in the last year? Yeah. Says, and I love this for a few reasons, I'll tell you one in a second. Breathing in, I see all my ancestors in me, my mineral ancestors, plant ancestors, mammal ancestors, and human ancestors. My ancestors are always present, alive in every cell of my body. I play a part in their immortality. So I love the sense that even though here we are present, we are also to be conscious that we are part of a long chain, and we were but a link in a chain, but we carry with us, right, the presence and the memories of everyone who's gone before us, and in a sense also everyone who's to follow us, right? We stand in between, right? The eternal past and, the sort of infinite future, however infinite it will be. So here, right here is really a profound moment, if you think about it. Here, right now, carries with it so much, almost too much, which we're going to get to in a minute. How do you stand with all of this? And it's hard to stand with all of this. It's like, you are all standing here today, so I'll just tell you a little story about that. The other day was with, I walk my dog every morning in Riverside Park, and I know a lot of people, it's lovely. And last Sunday, someone just sat on the ground, and I'm like, and we all just kind of sat in a circle. It was really beautiful. And then the next day I said, oh, you're standing, you're not sitting. She goes, yeah, I'm over it. I'm so over it. I said, what are you over? She goes, standing. So he's like, we just want to collapse, right? We just want to collapse. And we're going to get into that in a moment. That it's a challenge to actually stand and withstand and stand with all we're standing, especially in these times. So I just want to see if there are, yes, Alan.
When Moshe says Asher Enenu Po Imanu Hayom, you think he's talking not just future, but also past, the people who are not with us because they are no longer alive?
I think he's probably talking about the future.
That's what I thought, but Thich Nhat Hanh makes me think
That maybe it's the past.
maybe he's gone both ways.
Yeah, maybe he is.
I don't know.
Yeah. It's powerful to think he's gone both ways. That somehow, right, the sense that the people who came before us, even if they died in
They're still
slavery,
part of the
they're
covenant.
still redeemed by the covenant. And there are ideas that by our actions, and tshuva actually is one of these ideas from repentance. And the Talmud says that when you make tshuva, you, in fact, change the past. Can you liberate your ancestors by your own actions? It's an interesting, Jesse says, yes, you can.
Well, I would say two things. I think you can change your past because you can change the narrative.
You can change the narrative. So there might be a stuck narrative that you somehow,
You
right?
can change from being a victim to being a hero. You can change from being, demoralized to, a teacher. There's so many different ways you can change your story, and that changes your past dramatically.
your past and also that of your ancestors?
Well, it changes your understanding of your past, and therefore, you know, in some sense, it changes your past, because we think of our past as how we think of our past. If you change how you think of your past, it's different.
What's the past in our consciousness? Great.
But I had another thing I would say,
Yeah, go
kind
ahead.
of a digression, but it reminded me in sort of the flood, because, you know, I'm an academic, and there's a lot of anti-Semitism on college campuses, and I was having this major issue with my chair, because she was insisting that our first department meeting be on Rosh Hashanah, and I went with my union rep, and it was not the first thing around, you know, giving me a hard time about, you know, being Jewish. So I went with my union rep, and she was really digging in her heels, and I was.
And you were expected to come?
Yeah, it was a required department meeting.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was, yeah, it's a long story in a larger context, but I had this sense of like, you know, all the Jews before me, all my ancestors, all the Jews, you know, ahead of me, all the horizontally, and I was like, you're not gonna have this meeting, like, this is not gonna happen. Like, this is a serious thing, and she was like, you know, there's no other meeting, there's no other day, there's this, we shut up, like, you're not having this meeting. You know, I just had like this sense of like, all my ancestors were there.
Like standing behind you, yeah, that's
Next
amazing.
to me, yeah, we're all like, all there together.
Wow.
And she did change it, you know, took 45.
So standing with our ancestors can actually give us strength or weaken us depending on our history, right? And our understanding of our own history, right? Or both at different moments, yeah.
I have another digression.
Yeah.
But they could, because they come back. But when people tell their story, like the Gettysburg Address is a telling of a story in some form, it forces the listener to actually accept the reality of his or her life. That's what I think is the challenge. And that's what Moshe's doing as well. Here's the reality, even the ones that are coming in, like you said, could possibly not be conscious. But
Yes.
But he's reinstating the facts, and just keep telling that story. We'll accept, the listener will have to accept at some point what is the facts.
And affirming that no one is free from the story, no matter what your status is in the society. But you're not more important the story. Yeah, you're not.
Another digression to a digression. I'm reminded of a sort of solemn but beautiful memory passing along from the hospice rabbi that I met with the day that my mother died about, 7 years ago. And I think she said this before to other people, but I think she was sort of referencing these passages because she said something along the lines of, we think of life as something that we have. That it's like we have a life force, we have a life. And she's like, it's possible to just flip that around and say life has you. Life has you for like 70 years. And you are not the content, you are the vessel for that life force. And that life force includes that inheritance, that message from ancestors, those instructions, that information, that epigenetic expression, the Torah itself. Like you are the vessel for that life force, and it uses you to be life. And then, moves along. And so she was trying to reframe this idea. It's not that you have life, life has you.
You step into an ocean, and you're part of that ocean and that stream of life for as long as you're alive. Hold on, I see a technical problem, so I just want to deal with it.
Hey everybody, yeah, I was about to talk about that. Since the mic is extra hot today, which is great because then we could hear Rabbi Diane and everyone in the room better. If you are in the room, it's picking up papers rustling quite a bit and movement more, so just be a bit conscious about moving your papers too much. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. Also, Jay is raising his hand, so.
Okay, I'm so sorry about the endless background noises. We'll do what we can on this side of the screen.
It's like a squeaky chair, when
Yeah,
you're recording.
Try not to move, okay, everybody?
Last week we couldn't hear anything, so this is.
Okay, last week, okay, so.
Thomas said life has us, and now the Zoom has us.
Jay, I'm going to call on you in a minute. I just want to stay with Tomas's statement, which I really love, because it's I think there's a sense in a capitalist society, at least in my sense, that you own yourself. Almost like you're a product. You have to improve that product. And there's something about that that's insidious because it's never ending and the product is never good enough. But the sense that you can walk into the ocean of life and just be part of it and belong because you do, no matter what your value, right? You do.
You
It's a
are.
whole different sense of life.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it really is potentially freeing. I mean, just think about the self-improvement industry. God, it's exhausting, right? I'm gonna become thinner, I'm gonna become faster, I'm gonna become more articulate, I'm gonna become richer, I'm gonna become more famous, I'm gonna have a better relationship. Oh my God, can we just live our lives? So step into the ocean of life and let it take you on some level. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I see Jay. One of
So I
our
had a point to
resident
make.
poets, Jay, yes.
Hi there. I had a point to make, but given to your point right now, I would also add the importance of community. I mean, it's so critical here that it is a community that's being addressed. So it's not only about stepping into the ocean and not only owning yourself, but also understanding that that ocean is a community, if you will.
Absolutely.
Right. But my original point, I thought it. in
Wait,
the
can I
very
just
beginning-
can I just dwell on that for a second?
Sure.
So that sense of belonging, like we belong, I remember Professor mine in college, I never forgot this, we belong to history, and I didn't understand it, but I think I understand it more. Right? History doesn't belong to us, we belong to history, we belong to life, we belong to the earth, we belong perhaps to God. Right? What do we belong to? Because it's not ours to own and grasp, but ours to be part of. Okay, go on, Jay. Second point.
Yeah, that also is a segue to sort of the shadow aspect that I see, which I saw in the very first segment, but just now also this idea of standing on the shoulders of your ancestors, whatever, but also you didn't experience Egypt, but your parents did. And yes, that's a way of connecting to it, but it's also can be another version of cross-generational trauma.
Exactly. So my Chavrit and I were talking about this morning, it's almost like we have a tradition of re-traumatizing ourselves again and again, right? So how are we holding this history? Is it re-traumatizing us? Is it liberating us? Is it both? Probably both. It's not simple. But yeah, to be a good Jew, does that mean to re-traumatize ourselves?
That's what we do.
Repetition compulsion.
Repetition compulsion, Tomas says. Yes, Rachel McAuliffe.
I forgot your name.
Me, Jessica, or Jessica.
Jessica, I'm
Yeah,
glad
Jessica.
you dug in your heels, because what I'm experiencing in groups is a kind of white fragility toward Jewishness. And I was like a prime mover. We were asking a congressman to accept our bill because he lives in an area with a huge Jewish community. And there was one woman there who represented Nassau County or something, and we were discussing, his idea. It would be so wonderful if all the Jews in Block could vote for him. And she got very upset. It was like a white fragility. I don't want to discuss this. It's too complicated. Oh my goodness, the war in Gaza, it's too complicated. And please, no, don't tell him that your bill won certain awards from other Jewish organizations. Don't tell him that. Very complicated. And I thought, oh my God, this woman wants to snap her finger and make me disappear because she is uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I made up my mind, never, ever, ever, are you gonna do this to me? And I said, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. I said, if we don't discuss this, then I'm going to have my own Jewish problem.
All right, so those of us who feel the presence of our ancestors and standing up for
them,
ourselves, and for them.
Yes, we have to hold them.
Absolutely. Okay, I think yes, thank you.
Very strong.
I think I'm going on. Am I missing any hands? Remember, no squeaking in a room. Okay, here we go. So, and let's remember the God element. Can I have another reader? For the God element. Come on, raise your hand.
I'll read.
Great, hit it.
The God element.
So we're in number 7 by Dr. Rachel Arnosfeld, who happens to be the sister on that.
There is one other element which is significant in this understanding of Hayom, God.
Yes, Hayom is today.
Today. The Torah doesn't just say we are standing still today. It says we are standing still before God. It is God who grants us this escape from the human framework of horizontal time, this peek into the divine vertical vision of eternity, of a present merged with its past and future. The Lord's name, as it is written but not pronounced, it is too sacred and secret to be pronounced, actually contains within it the word for being in the past, the present, and the future. That is God's essence.
So Yud Hey Vav Hey includes all the verbs for being, right? In the past, the present, and the future. Love that. Go ahead.
Okay. Unlike each of us, he was, he is, and he will be. What we are doing when we stand still for that moment of vertical, eternal time is existing in the divine realm. As we say at the end of Musaf on Rosh Hashanah, Hayom te'amtzeinu. Today may you strengthen us. Hayom tevarchenu. Today may you bless us. Today may you strengthen and bless us with the full experience of Hayom.
And that song is really wonderful because it's like that prayer. It's like an insistence on like today, like do it for us today, right? Today is real. Today counts, and we are really standing here on this day. Please close the door. Lots of noise. Go ahead.
Hayom today, feeling vertical time.
Yes. Okay. All right. So now we talked about Hayom. We talked.
What is the thing about the every letter in God's name is past, present, future?
So it's the conjugation of God of the word being in different tenses. Okay, so now let's talk about standing a little bit. And this is from Franz Rosenzweig. I'm sure you've seen this on my source sheets before, if you remember, because it's been on them before. This is a text I love. And there are 2 texts I love, that's standing and falling. Another reader for this?
I'll read.
Yeah.
Standing, from a letter to his sister-in-law, of Franz Rosenzweig, His Life and Thought, by Nachman Glatzer. Each of us can only seize by the scruff whoever happens to be closest to us in the mire. This is the neighbor the Bible speaks of. And the miraculous thing is that although each of us stands in the mire of ourself, we can each pull out our neighbor, or at least keep him from drowning. None of us has solid ground under our feet. Each of us is only held up by the neighborly hands grasping us by the scruff, with the result that we're each held up by the next one, and often, indeed most of the time, hold each other up mutually. All this mutual upholding, a physical impossibility, becomes possible only because the great hand from above supports all those holding human hands by their wrists. It is this, and not some non-existent solid ground under our feet, that enables all the human hands to hold and to help. There is no such thing as standing. There is only being held up.
Which is really amazing. Oh, really? Oh, you're kidding. That's so great. Rabbi David quoted this specifically.
No, but that was the
I
concept.
see. And this really undergirds that sense of we in Nitzavim, like we are all standing here to stay. Right? It's a collective enterprise. And I think the more we feel that it's a collective enterprise, the more we are potentially empowered. And hopefully, yeah, Kulchem, exactly, Kulchem. All of you here this day. Okay, so I will read one more from David Grossman, which is kind of brutal because I'm pretty sure I wrote this after.
Standing and falling.
Yeah.
Yet in order to do almost anything, you have to act against the gravity of grief. It is heavy, it pulls you down, and you have to make a deliberate effort to overcome it. You have to decide that you won't fall. In the last novel he wrote, Falling Out of Time, this idea of falling all the time, the temptation to fall is very strong.
And I was just, I'm gonna stop my share for a minute. I was just teaching the book of Jonah, right? So Jonah not only runs away from God's mission, but falls into a deep sleep. Right, there's two means of escape, right? Going in exactly the opposite direction that you're supposed to go in, and just like descending, right? And Jonah keeps descending, right? Descending, going down into the boat, and then descending into the innermost bowels of the boat, and then descending into a deep sleep, which has in it the word to descend, a tardemas, very specific kind of slumber, kind of anesthetized state of being. So there are all kinds of ways to run away and not be fully here on this day, on this day.
One thing, I know somebody who was in India at the time of the tsunami and saved one of his neighbors by throwing a rope to that family, but could not save about 10 others. And he and his father were yanking them, and that destroyed that person's life. But, so what you were saying, Tom, is that life takes you, and that sometimes you just have to accept that it doesn't always work and doesn't always save the life.
And because I think we belong to one another in a profound way, that kind of thing can actually destroy it. You can't save someone's life. Yeah, okay. Light stuff. Okay, let's go on. I see any hands? No? Oh, I see.
This is also a little off topic, but it's a positive thing.
Forget it.
It's because everybody in this day and age when there's so much anti-Semitism and making it difficult to be publicly Jewish. I went with another Romemu member to see the play on Broadway, Thornton Wilder's Our Town. And at the beginning of the play, as like all of the entire cast walked onto the stage, they were singing the Shema. And they just sang, and they sang the first line, but like kind of in like a round robin over and over again for about 2-3 minutes and in different, and I looked at the playbill and no one was obviously Jewish in the cast or directors or anything like that, and like me and my friend, we were just like, our mouths were like hanging open, we couldn't believe it. So I don't know if this was like a one-off or they do it at each performance, but it had nothing to do with the play, and nobody gave an explanation.
Whoa.
And it was basically, you know, if you're Jewish, you understand what this is and what it means, and if you're not, you're listening to nice music. So it was like saying, we support you.
And interesting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Huh?
Was it in Hebrew or English?
In Hebrew, Shema Yisrael. They sang it in Hebrew. There were like 25 cast members.
Wow.
They came, like they all came down the aisles, walked onto the stage, and for about like 3 minutes or so sang it like in a round
When
robin.
was this?
Last week.
Last week, okay. All right, wait, we're gonna go on. We're gonna go on. Up. These digressions are beautiful. And they're not really digressions, but we're going on. Okay, so. Okay, number 10, sorry. This is one of my favorite passages in all of Torah, and I hope you will see why. Number 10, Deuteronomy 30. That's 11.
That's possible. Oh, we don't have the numbers.
There's no numbers on it.
For some
That's
reason,
bad.
there are no numbers on the
I don't know
sheet.
why that happened. I apologize. Deuteronomy 30, verse 11. Ki ha-mitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzvahcha hayom lo nifleti mincha v'lo b'cholka hayu. Surely this instruction which I am commanding upon you this day is not too wondrous for you, nor is it too far, too far or beyond reach. Lo ra shamayim hi, it is not in the heavens. Lay more to say, mi ya'aleh lanu shamayma. Who's going to go up to the heavens? Vayikacheha lanu, and bring it down for us, or take it down for us. Vayishmi'enu ota b'na'aseh. That we may, and get it for us and impart it to us, that we may observe it, or that we may do it. V'lo me'ever layanhi, and it is not across the sea. Lay more to say, mi ya'avor lanu et ever hayam, who will cross the sea for us? V'yikacheha lanu, to take it for us. V'yishmi'enu atas, that we can listen to it, v'na'asena, and do it. Ki, rather, ki karov elecha hadavar me'od. This thing is very close to you. Ficha, in your mouth, u'bilvavcha, la, and in your heart, la asoto, to do it. So this is really interesting, and I think it's, kind of apparent why Moshe would be saying this. This is not depending on me. This Torah thing doesn't depend on me. It is close to you. It is within reach. It is within your grasp. So let's see what at least one contemporary commentator says it means. Rabbi Rachel Barron. Could I have an English reader in the room? Loud? Joe. I'm calling on you, Joe. The mitzvah, this connection.
This mitzvah, this connection, this instruction is not beyond us. It doesn't require us to be someone that we're not. It doesn't demand that we change altogether before we even attempt to take it on. This is a mitzvah which is already sweet in our mouths, already encoded in our beating hearts. Place 2 fingers on a pulse point and feel for your heartbeat. Love, dog.
That's the heartbeat sound of the heartbeat.
You turning toward God, God turning toward you, you reaching out, God reaching back.
So God being that close, the sense that God or the instruction or the Torah being that close. So when you read the Torah, you read it with an understanding that it needs to make sense in terms of what you understand about the world, right? It's not only what someone explains to you that the Torah means. Okay, Jay wants to say something.
It's a beautiful passage, but to me, it's all about the last word. We have, it's in our hearts, in our mouths, it's accessible to us, but what is it? It's not a credo, it's not an apprehension. Ultimately, it's a deed. And I think that's really important. I don't think we should lose sight of that last word, because nothing happens if it's not actually in action.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. So Torah is, as you said, in our hearts, in our mouths, to do, to embody maybe, to embody with one another, which goes back to the Rosenzweig piece. How do we embody this in our communities at this moment, and yet with the consciousness of our ancestors? Okay, so now Moses prepares his people for his death. Is there anyone here who can read a little bit of the Hebrew? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
וילך משה וידבר את הדברים האלה אל כל ישראל.
Yeah.
Moses went and spoke these things to all Israel.
I'm going to interrupt you once more.
ויאמר עליהם, בן 120 שנה אנוכי היום, לא אוכל עוד לצאת ולבוא, ואדוני אמר אלי, לא תעבור את הירדן הזה. He said to them, I am now 120 years old, I can no longer be active. Moreover, God said to me, you shall not go across yonder Jordan.
Okay, stop there for a minute. So the Vayelech, Moses went or walked. There's some beautiful commentary on this, I think, starting with Midrash, also picked up by Rashi, that Moshe went to every tent and tent in all of Israel to say, look, it's time for me to go. It's time for my death. Like a very personal kind of, connected statement, right, to every family in all of Israel. And you could hear, right? God said to me, I will not, pass this Jordan. You could hear the
It sounds a
sorrow.
little bitter.
Or bitterness or grief. Yeah, absolutely. Nachmanides says it.
Who says
I saw that Ramban says it. Doesn't Rashi say it too?
Not in description detail.
Got it.
All that, he went to every single tenant.
Every single time.
Every single tribe.
Yes, yeah. Okay, go on.
Adonai Elohecha hu over lefanecha, hu yashmid et hagoyim ha'ela lefanecha, v'yirishtam. Yehoshua hu over lefanecha ka'asher diber Adonai. It is indeed God who will cross over before you and who will wipe out those nations from your path, and you shall dispossess them. Joshua is the one who shall cross before you, as God has spoken. Va'asa Adonai lahem ka'asher asa l'sichon u'l'og malchei ha'amori u'la'artzam asher yishmirotam. God will do to them as was done to Sichon and Og, kings of the Amorites, and to their countries when God wiped them out. Unatatam Adonai lifnechem, Tanam Adonai lifnechem, va'asitem lahem, kachol hamitzvah asher tziviti etchem. God will deliver them up to you, and you shall deal with them in full accordance with the instruction that I have enjoined upon you. Chizku v'imtzu al tiru v'al tartzu mipnehem ki Adonai Elohecha hu haholech imach lo ya'acha v'lo ya'azvecha. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Be strong and resolute. Be not
strong and courageous, right?
Right. Be not in fear or in dread of them, for it is indeed your God who marches with you, will not fail you or forsake you.
So who walks before you or walks with you, just the way that we saw a second ago that Vayilech Moshe, that Moshe walks, right? And that God doesn't abandon you, and that word abandon will become important in a passage in a moment.
Just highlight the word resolute, just thinking of Lincoln, and we highlight resolve and resolving yourself, which is another way of saying coming together.
Yeah.
It's important.
Nice.
Vayikra Moshe Yoshua, Vayomer Elav, Le'nei Kol Yisrael, Chazak ve'amatz, Ki ata tavo et ha'am hazeh el ha'aretz, Asher nishba Adonai la'avotam, Latet lahem, Va'ata tanchi le'otam. Then Moses called Yehoshua and said to him in the sight of all of Israel, be strong and resolute, for it is you who shall go with this people into the land that God swore to their fathers to give them, and it is you who shall apportion it to them.
So be strong and have courage. So those are words I hear on this day. I feel like we our people need these words on this day. Wherever we're headed, right, whatever new stage we're headed towards, because if we don't know what's on the other side of this, we need strength and courage to get through this. This is a beautiful passage, but I think we're going to skip it, but I'd like you to read it when you can. It's basically about God walking amongst us and Moshe knowing that when Moshe walks among Moshe's people that he, in a sense, brings God's presence to the people. But I want to get to what Eric was talking about, and I think other people also talked about. It's the disturbing pattern, like what's going to happen here. So I'm in Deuteronomy 31:16. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe hincha shochet in avotecha. So God said to Moses, you are to lie with your ancestors. V'kam ha'am hazeh v'zana acharei Eloheinu nechar ha'aretz asher hu va shama b'kirba. And his people thereupon go astray after the alien gods in their midst. In the land that they're about to enter. So here they are, they're gonna enter the promised land, and it's gonna go south immediately. Zabani, and they are going to abandon me, that same word, abandon. They're going to abandon God, right? And break the covenant that I made with them. The chara api vo bayom hahu, and I'm going to get mad at them on that day. The azavtim, and I'm going to abandon them. So God's actions are going to mirror the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel's actions. They abandon God, God abandons them. Right? And it's often said that what happens in heaven is kind of in the heavens and mirrors what happens below. So as below, so as above. And what is God going to do? Histarti panai mehem bayat lechol umitzauhu laot rabot v'sarot v'amar bayom hahu halo al ki en Elohai b'kirbi mitzauni halaot ha'ela. So I will hide my face. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to hide my face from them. They shall be ready prey, and many evils and troubles shall be before them. And they will say on that day, and they shall say on that day, surely because our God is not in our midst, that these evils have befallen us. Va'anochi haster astir, and I will surely hide my face, a doubling of that verb, I will hide my face on that day, Bayom hahu, kol hara'a asher asan, all the evil that they did, ki panat el Elohim acherim, because they turned to other gods. Bata. So here's the little nechemta, little like, what do we do in the face of that? Kadvu lachem et hashira hazot, write down this song, v'lamda et b'nei Yisrael, and teach it to b'nei Yisrael, the children of Israel, sima b'fihem, put it in their mouths, Laman tiyeh li hashira hazot le'ed b'nei Yisrael. So put in their mouths in order that this poem may be witness against the people of Israel. In other words, it's going to happen, but you're going to have this record, so you're going to know that this is the long story, that this is what happens, right? And you're going to look on the Torah and say, oh my God, we did it again. It's almost like you have a journal, right, of your own actions. You know, there was one Rosh Hashanah that I gave a sermon, it was pre-Romemu, and it was like, oh my God, like, you know, every year I'm in tshuva, every year I'm looking at the same stupid sins, the same stupid patterns. Right? And it's like a sense of like, wow, like what do you need to do to actually break the patterns or, you know, somehow untie the knots? And, you know, when you think about the long story, it's almost like it testifies against you in a sense. Like, these are your patterns. This is how you're imprisoned. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? At a certain point in your life, you see that. Like in your 20s, you're sort of still, it's my thing, you're still sort of enacting the patterns. It takes a while to actually see them and know them. Okay, so.
But Diane,
yes.
I think not to be fooled, because for centuries and up until very recently, they thought, for example, like your brain, the brain cells, they just fell off, they went to die, you aged, that was it. And in fact, that's not true at all. So there's, at every moment, you know, is sort of poignant, present, and there's the possibility, you know, of some
Absolutely.
of
I'm not saying we're
regeneration,
stuck in the
rejuvenation.
pattern.
So I think it's the duality of those. It's those two things at the same time.
Love that. So there's always possibility, and yet there's awareness of the power of these patterns, which may be transgenerational. And we talked about before. Jay was saying we're the people that keep re-traumatizing ourselves. Right, that's what the story can either re-traumatize or liberate or do both. Okay.
Well, the song that you played at the beginning is very uplifting.
So that's the song that I played at the beginning. We're going to get to the song right now. So here's what Nachman of Bratslav says. Okay. So, ki yesh shnei hasdorot. There are two levels of concealment. So now we're talking about, it's all about the verse that we just saw, that God is going to hide God's face from us And it said hastir aster, so they're perhaps Nachman is playing off this double concealment, right? I will hide. And when God, blessed be God, hides with one concealment, or conceals one, God can, Hashem ha'od l'matzo. It's very hard to find. But when God hides with one concealment, you can sort of struggle and dig deep until you find God in that concealment. So let's say, you're depressed, and depression sort of hides a sense of life, but you know that sense of life and that divine energy is there. So you go looking, right? You go looking, and maybe you'll find it. And maybe you'll actually break through that depression. But when God hides, conceals inside a concealment, so that the concealment itself is hidden from the person. Like you don't even know that God is hidden. Then the person doesn't even know that God is hidden from them. Then you can't even find it. It is entirely impossible to find God since they are not at all aware. So let's say, again, I was talking about Chavruta this morning, we were saying maybe there's a concealment in self-righteousness because you think you're so right, you don't even know that something's hidden from you at that moment. And you think you're so right and other people are so wrong. You're not even recognizing how what you're doing, maybe you're reacting to something what other people are doing because you're doing it too. For instance.
You don't know what you don't know.
What?
So you don't know what you don't know. It's just the notion of we see but you don't perceive, right?
Yes.
I see but you don't yet perceive. Yes.
Exactly.
Diane, you said for instance.
I said for example, yes.
What was it again?
What was the example? Like someone in us, we all, in our self-righteousness, it's hard to know even as it's being concealed. Because we think that we're so right, and we think we just know the truth or the divine truth. So beware of self-righteousness. Okay, one more on this. So here, he uses the proof text, Va'anochi hastir. He actually says the same thing in this passage, so I'm not going to read it. But it's basically, what's the concealment? And the concealment is when you don't even know that there's a concealment there.
That's right.
And here's a beautiful song, which we're going to play one more time before we end. But I want to read one more thing. Okay. The last source. Song as eternal witness. Va'anta, you see the bowl? Va'anta shiram azot panav le'ed. Kilot tishachach mipi zar'o. This poem shall confront them as a witness, since it will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. So it's interesting. So it's a sense, on one hand, that the Torah is an aid. Shh, they can hear everything. Is testifying against us, and maybe there's another meaning, or maybe I'm just hearing the other meaning because I want to, but there's a sense that this long poem is also comforting to us because it's like a long journal of our collective history where we see that our people has suffered before and has been liberated before, right? Has gone into highs and lows. And again, the sense of, you see, Moshe tells, and Moshe writes down this song on that day and teaches it to Israel by Yitzhak, Yoshua ben Nun, and commands Joshua ben Nun by Yomer and says, Chazak va'amatz, again, Chazak va'amatz, be strong and courageous. Because you, Rabbi b'nei Israel, Haaretz Asher, Shpati lehem v'anochi imach. For you shall bring the Israelites to the land that I